This is All the Right Marketing, a publishing podcast by Cardinal Rule Press. Now, here's your host, Maria Dismondy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to All the Right Marketing, where we talk with business owners and industry leaders about marketing their programs and products. The unique thing about our podcast is that we talk about books. We talk with authors, we talk with publishers, and we get down to the journeys of how these individuals really came to write books, to publish books, and to get them into the hands of readers. Today's guest is Shelly Anand, and she is the co-founder and executive director of Serve Legal Collaborative, which I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about. It is an immigrant and worker rights nonprofit legal organization based in Georgia. She is the daughter of Indian immigrants and the granddaughter of refugees from the partition of India and Pakistan. Shelly has been fighting for immigrants and workers in the Deep South for over a decade as a legal aid attorney, a litigator with the U.S. Department of Labor, and an immigrant rights attorney. We love advocates, we love activists, and I'm even more excited to be speaking with you today, Shelly. In addition to her legal work, Shelly is also a children's book author who writes books she wished she had growing up as a brown girl in the Deep South. Her debut picture book, Lakshmi's Much, in 2021, featured on the Today Show, NBC News, and Glamour magazine, tells the story of a young Indian girl's journey to accept her body hair and celebrate her heritage after being teased about her mustache. And her second picture book, which I'm not going to tell you about because it just came out this summer, we are going to be talking about. She lives in Georgia with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Shelly.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Oh my goodness. We're going to dive right in. I'm very excited to talk with you. We have a book coming out October 1st with Vanessa Garcia, and she is an activist for the people of Cuba. And we have been following her story since we signed with her 2 years ago. And I just love how someone can be so passionate about different about things on different ends of the spectrum, right? So here you are being an activist for the adults, but then you're also on the other end of the spectrum, fighting for children so that they can see themselves in picture books and they can have the books that you wish that you had. So I think it takes a unique person to be able to balance that different type of work. So let's kind of talk about how you went from legal work to children's book. So your first book came out in 2021. When did you start writing it and getting the idea to have this book?
Yeah, so I, never really thought I would enter, children's literature or kid lit. I think people that enjoy writing and storytelling and reading, I think all of us, have this dream on the back burner. One day I'll write a book. One day I'll write the next great American novel or what have you. But I hadn't really thought about it, but, I was on maternity leave actually with my second child, and a friend of mine who's also South Asian and a mother here in Georgia called me, and she had
Hold on, what is her name?
Sonia Khan. Her name's Sonia Khan.
Okay. Because I know several. Okay, keep going. We'll talk about it.
You might know her. Her name's Sonia Khan. She's Pakistani. We both went to Wellesley for college, and so we've been good friends, and we always talk to each other about raising our brown kids in the South and exposing them to our heritage and our culture and balancing out things. And she called me because her daughter was 6 at the time and was in kindergarten and had come home crying because someone had teased her about having a mustache. And it just flooded me with memories of being teased for my body hair as a kid. And it also just reminded me of this, journey I had been on of body hair removal that any, swarthy, hairy woman can relate to. And really thinking about how we wanted it to be different for our kids and for our daughters, especially her being 6 years old. My friend Sonia was like, I'm not going to go take her to get her, mustache or much threaded or waxed at 6 years old. And so we started thinking through or talking about how to make it into something positive and not negative. And that's really where the idea for the story came to me. And I wrote down this idea and I started playing with it. And a friend of mine named Sabah Sulaiman, who's also a literary agent and also went to Wellesley College, I emailed her and I said, Sabah, what do you think? And she's like, Shelly, I love this concept, but you need to learn how to write a picture book. And so I started reading, I have two children. My son is 8 now, but he was, 3 at the time. And I just started going to the library with them and checking out what was out there on bullying, on difference, on South Asian kids.
You did your due diligence for sure.
I did. Mm-hmm. And I just started playing with it more. I mean, I think when I was growing up, I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, I grew up on books like the Berenstain Bears, which are filled with words. And now picture books, there's much more of a balance. You have maybe 500 words in a picture book. And there's more of a balance between the illustrations and the narrative and the words. So I started, playing with that because when I first wrote it, it was very much in that genre, filled with words, and I kind of describe it as Dora the Explorer. Like I'm wearing a backpack and it's pink, I'm walking to school and, all of that. So I played with it and worked on it for maybe 8 or 9 months, had friends read it. Sonia read it. Sonia's daughter read it. I read it to my kids. I joined a writing group. And
where did you, because listeners always like that to know these details. Where did you, what writing group? Was it a local group? Was it an online group?
Yeah. So, I'm trying to remember what it's called. The SCWBI, which I always
SCBWI. Yep.
Yes. I joined that. There's like a Southeastern chapter. And I joined that. And then through that, they had local meetups, local like weekly writer groups. And so I joined one of those. And it wasn't specific to Kidlit. It was like just a group of writers. And I came with, my picture book manuscript. And it was really great to kind of have a group that I could go to. I would take my newborn at the time with me to meetups at a local Irish pub and have them read it. And so, 8 or 9 months in, I sent it back to Sabah and she's like, oh, wow, you actually, you worked on this. You worked really hard on this. And her and I had a back and forth with some edits and comments. And then she ended up taking me on as a client. And then Kokila, which is a newer imprint of Penguin Random House, Namrata Tripathi, who is the chief editor there and started Kokila. She loved the book.
Wonderful. I heard her in a panel during the pandemic or after the pandemic. I heard her speak, and I love what they're doing with that imprint.
Yes, a very, very cool imprint. So it was a really fun journey. It took a lot of work. Like even, I didn't sell it right away. I got some rejections, and even the process of rejections was so eye-opening because getting the feedback about the manuscript was super interesting. So the way that the book is written now is very different from how it was initially when it was first going out on submission.
I want to pause there because I think it's important for the aspiring writers listening to this to take note that she worked on this manuscript for 8 to 9 months and how different it really was. And so you were very open to the feedback, and then, you were able to sell the book. But if you held on to it and you were not open to the constructive feedback, it might have been a different story.
No, totally. Yes. And also I'm brand new to this industry. And so I'm very, very blessed that I have someone like Sabah, who is, I think she's been on the podcast at one point with you all.
Yeah, she was.
But she's, her wisdom is always wonderful. And, she really mentally prepared me. She's like, it could not sell, and like being ready for that. And, just trying it out. But when I sent it out, when she sent it out on submission, and I will add, before we even sent it out on sub, she did recommend that I get a professional reading done, or have like a professional critique done. Mm-hmm. And I think she kind of gave me some recommendations, and we budgeted how much can I dish out to do this. And so that was done by someone she recommended. And then after I, incorporated that critique's feedback, then it went out on sub. And the feedback I got, if you've read the book, Lakshmi is on the playground playing with her friends who point out that she has a mustache. And initially in the first draft, it was a lot harsher, right? It was more like bullying.
Yeah.
And because that's what I went through. And so, I got two kind of forms of feedback. The first feedback was, this bullying is a little bit too harsh for the age. And my question for Sabba, or, my question for that feedback was, are the folks giving this feedback, are they people of color? Have they been through what I've been through? And the answer was mostly no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second feedback was, well, she's too self-conscious for her age. And my question for that group is, do they have children at this time right now?
Uh-huh.
Because I don't disagree. I didn't start getting teased about my body hair until I was 11, 12 years old. But things that happened to us are happening a lot earlier for children.
Yeah, I was a teacher for 6 and 7 year olds, and we had a very I taught in a very Indian American populated area, and my students would be embarrassed about the food that they were eating. And here on the flip side, their families were inviting me to their homes with these beautiful Indian dishes. They were gifting me saris and just like wonderful. But the children who were 6 and 7 were embarrassed about the food that they were eating in their lunch boxes. So, I think you're right. People who are with children are going to know if this is really happening. So those are really good questions to follow up with on that feedback.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just good to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the audience. But I still took back the feedback and made it, instead of it being this flat out teasing, this flat out bullying, it became something that I think is also aspirational. It also talks about, how do you point out difference in a way that's not mean and not harsh. And that's what her friends do. They're like playing a game, and they're playing farm animals at recess, and they're like, Lakshmi, you should be a cat because you have whiskers. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so it's kind of, written not just for Lakshmi, not just for, I did write this book for and about Desi brown kids, right?
Yeah, but it's also for the children who are on the flip side, and how can you navigate differences?
Right. What is a way, they're not teasing her, they're not making fun of her. They're really just playfully pointing out something that they notice about her that's they find unique, that they find different. And so I'm really grateful for the feedback, because I think in the end, I'm happier with the story, because it doesn't have to be this kind of polarizing, you're mean, you're not my friend. How do we embrace and love each other and point out our differences and then celebrate those differences, which is what ends up happening in the book. She goes on this journey of, feeling uncomfortable, feeling shy, and then goes home, and her mom is talking to her about, I was really inspired by art from Iran, from the Qajar Empire, and from India in antiquity, where they showed women with unibrows and mustaches, and how this Western concept of beauty kind of got imposed. And so that's kind of where the story goes. And then she comes back to school and is ready to kind of celebrate the fact that she has a mustache. So that was kind of the journey, at least with the first book.
That's wonderful. And, follow-up questions. So how do you feel your work as a legal aid attorney, litigator, how do you feel like your work supporting and fighting for immigrant rights helps you in this role as writer and children's book author?
I mean, I think that I do see them as related.
Mhm.
A lot of my work around immigrant rights has to do with things like xenophobia and things like folks not willing to accept difference and willing to accept that people speak other languages that are coming here from other countries, and recognizing the humanity and the dignity of every single person. And I think starting those, getting those as values to young children, I think is vital. So,
And that is why I started my company. Like, I am with you. I think a lot of the older adults right now, we're not going to be able to change their way of interacting and, like you said, their values, but these young children, they're our next generation. And I love that you were able to take that and say, you know what, I'm going to do this through the young generation. That's wonderful.
yeah, absolutely. It's much more healing too. I mean, being a litigator is exhausting.
I bet.
There's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of violence, and being able to step out of that space and do this work of writing and imparting ideas and values for children is very much healing work. For me, the reason I did do the work that I do as an attorney has to do with my own family and our own lived experiences as immigrants, and me as a daughter of immigrants, and what we faced growing up, me growing up here in the South. I came of age at 14, I was 14 when 9/11 happened, and that had a huge impact on me and my friend groups and all of these things that I went through. I experienced xenophobia and racism and all of those things. And so it's part of me becoming a children's book author has a lot to do with my children and wanting it to be different for them, wanting them to have more confidence and self-assuredness and self-love in a way that I wish I had as a child.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. So how do you get that message out to parents? So this is the tricky question. How are you marketing your books? How are you getting readers who really, you're not connecting with children online, right? We're connecting with the people who are buying the books and getting the books from the library for the children. How are you connecting with the caregivers who are getting your book for their children? What would you say one way that you're marketing and really getting exposure and visibility around your titles would be?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I, luckily have been published by 2 large publishing houses, and they have marketing teams who have done great things. Like my second book that came out this summer, I Love My Body Because, with Simon and Schuster, they created these fun little videos that they promoted. I think that the topics are topics that educators and parents are interested in. They're interested in finding books that really teach and promote self-love and self-acceptance, and this theme of body positivity, whether it's body hair positivity or general body positivity, which is what I Love My Body Because is about. I think for parents, especially with Lakshmi, I think a lot of adults were excited about the book because I had so many fellow South Asian, not just South Asian, but fellow hairy ladies,
Yeah.
reaching out and being like, oh, I wish I had this book growing up. I'm going to get it for my niece. I'm going to get it for my own children. I'm a teacher. I'm going to get it for my classroom.
It's like you connected with other individuals who had that own pain point in their own childhood, right? Who I love that. Who said, gosh, I wish I had this when I was a kid too.
Absolutely. And I say that I wrote it for us too. I mean, even though picture books and children's literature generally is, in that genre of children's literature, I think it is some of the most rich form of literature when it comes to celebrating diversity, when it comes to, imparting ideals and values and storytelling. I think it's one of my favorite, it's become one of my favorite genres. And so I think that that's part of it, right? When you're creating a story or you're creating a message that you think is important and that you want to share, I think people pick up on that, and it markets itself in that way. I've had, I think so many teachers and just like you, who have a classroom with diverse children or a diverse population of children, and they know that there's a South Asian kid in their classroom. I think being able to see a title and be like, oh, let me explore this, and seeing that it's a book that's discussing, a white girl and an Indian girl are talking about their body hair. That's just very rich material for a classroom discussion. So how do we talk about difference in a way that's respectful? How do we, what are some takeaways from this book, right?
Yeah, they're using them as mentor text to guide a conversation, and it's a much bigger picture than the conversation on body hair, but it goes around with respect and communication and how can we approach these tough topics.
Absolutely. So I think that's part of it. But in terms of, promotion, I've been invited to go to libraries and do readings. I take those on, whenever there's an opportunity for me to do an event. I live in Decatur, Georgia, and we have a really adorable, amazing independent children's bookstore called Little Shop of Stories. And they've been a huge support to me and the launch of my books. And so I've done both my launch events in this pandemic with them. The first was virtual, the second was in person. And, creating opportunities for community. So I even did the thing that's been cool. I mean, I don't know what it was like to be a picture book author before the pandemic. I know it was very different, but my first book came out in 2021. And I even did an event at a school in India about Lakshmi's Much.
Wow. So that must have been amazing.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, I wrote this book about our community for our community, and people have been very excited about it. People in Canada have been emailing me about it. Just a lot of fellow South Asian moms thanking me. And then the other thing that's been really cool is kids are have read this book and are actually excited about their body hair. And so this might be the first time that a family's talking about body hair, and a kid will realize oh, I have leg hair, or I have a much too. And it's a point of excitement rather than shame. And even some kids being why don't I have a much,
or they might be thinking, I want one.
I want one, right? So that's really neat.
You can see that, and for those of you listening, if you have the opportunity to hop over to YouTube and see this interview, just the joy on your face and what you're doing, and what a difference it's making. So for those of you listening, we will put links for you to buy both of Shelly's books, as well as a link. And I don't think I have this, Shelly, but we'll go over to the website and see if we can find it. But to donate to your organization, Sir Legal Collaborative.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so we will put that in the show notes. And my final question for you today, as we wrap things up, is what is next for you in the writing department?
Yeah, so I sold a third picture book to Simon & Schuster. It's called In This Family, and it's about my family. My husband is, so I'm, daughter of Indian immigrants, Punjabi. My husband is white, Midwestern from Chicago, and it's about our biracial, multiracial, multi-religious family, our Punjabi, Irish, Midwestern family. And, that we have family in India, we have family in Wisconsin, and just really a celebration of our family and the fact
Lovely. And when will that come out?
that comes out in 2024.
Wonderful. Oh,
And
that's great. And who is that with? You said
Simon and Schuster. And then Lakshmi's Much is actually going to be coming out in Spanish in 2024 as well. So I'm really excited about that.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
We are just thrilled to share your story, and we interview guests every Tuesday. So for those of you listening, we look forward to our next interview that will air in a week. Until then, think outside of the box and don't be afraid to reach your audience in new and creative ways. Thank you so much, Shelly. If this episode resonated with you, let's take it a step further. Head over to cardinalrulepress.com and check out our blog. It is filled with resources for anyone who loves books, whether you are a publisher, a librarian, a bookseller, or an author. We help you to figure out ways to get visibility around those books. Thanks for listening to All the Right Marketing with Maria Dismondy. If there is a topic you would like us to explore and cover, please email podcast@cardinalrulepress.com. Head over to our website, cardinalrulepress.com, to sign up for our monthly newsletter where you can learn more tips on getting books visible into the market. Last but not least, follow us on Instagram for a daily dose of all things books. If you enjoyed this episode, rate and review or share with a friend or colleague. Thanks so much.